The story unfolds against the nighttime backdrop of Tokyo, with its lights twinkling from the vastness of its skyscrapers. From one of them, an enigmatic girl dressed in shadows decides to plunge into the abyss. Under that same starry dome, Yamori, a high school student, slips out of his home, tormented by insomnia and the nostalgia of a love he failed to understand. A rejected love letter from the past weighs on him more than any textbook. As he wanders alone in the silence of the city, the digital world suggests he drowns his sorrows in alcohol. Though he hesitates, a vending machine crossing his path tests his resolve, and succumbing, he procures a forbidden drink. But just as the first sip touches his lips, a mocking voice interrupts the moment. It's Nazuna, the girl dressed in night, who instead of condemning him, offers a perspective. The restlessness of sleep is the reflection of a soul searching for its place. After pointing out some men sleeping off their drunkenness, Nazuna jests that they have found their own version of peace, but the charm shatters when Yamori, trying to greet them, is met with the unsavory sight of one of them vomiting. Freedom has its ups and downs. Back at Nazuna's home, a simple space with a lone mattress, the atmosphere becomes more intimate. As she removes her coat, her lighter attire causes Yamori's heart to race. Yet with a gentle voice, Nazuna suggests he close his eyes and get lost in the moment. But in that very instant of vulnerability, Yamori feels a sharp sting on his neck that bewilders him. Seeing drops of his own blood on Nazuna's lips, he's shocked to discover her true nature. Though she tries to play it off blaming a mosquito, he knows that wasn't the case. After the revelation, she has no choice but to confess her vampire nature. Terrified, Yamori believes he's met the same fate, but she reassures him that the transformation is impossible. Instead of relief, the young man expresses disappointment, questioning why she denied him the transformation. Nazuna then explains that he must be in love with the vampire girl who sucks his blood, but Yamori, unable to comprehend emotions, has never felt love. It's very hard for him because he doesn't understand human emotions, and he also doesn't understand girls very well. Tired of his empty life, he pleads for her to turn him so he can eternally enjoy the night. Blushing at such a confession, she reiterates she will only drink his blood. If he falls in love, it won't be because of her fangs. On the rooftop, she reveals that blood tastes better on the edge of sleep. Unexpectedly, a kick sends him into the void. Sure of his end, he's suddenly caught by her, soaring together through the night sky, showing him the magnificence of the darkness. Flying over the city, the lights contrast with the firmament, a sight that awakens in Yamori a desire for an eternal night. Once again, he sneaks off, looking for her in the park. Nazuna then explains that for their kind, feeding is an intimate act, a fusion of pleasure and sustenance. Blushing, he persists in his desire for transformation, proclaiming his budding love for her. She, blushing in return, labels him a pervert as he offers her his neck. But Yamori still doesn't grasp the deep nature of such a delicate act. He's only certain that he's begun a love story with the vampire, whose fondness for his blood grows. Thus, night after night, he roams searching for her until she reappears, and he questions her absence. Though brief, the reunion reignites the flame that binds them and feeds his thirst for eternal darkness. She tells him she is looking for someone to feed on, which makes him jealous. "Why look for others when I'm here for you?" Nazuna argues that she needs variety, but he counters that for vampires, feeding is like sex, comparing it to being with just anyone. Yamori tries to change the subject, suggesting they exchange numbers. However, she doesn't have a phone. They go to her apartment, where she finds an old phone that she's reluctant to carry. In the end, she gives in and suggests they sleep, inviting him to her futon. Lying next to her in the dark, he feels uncomfortable. She can't resist asking to feed on him, but he refuses, upsetting her. She promised she wouldn't look for others, and now he's denying her food. In reality, he's just being a jealous child. They share an awkward moment as they get closer, and she admits she was looking for him, though she's hesitant to confess it. Yamori slips off his jacket, exposing his neck to Nazuna, letting her drink in the life that flows through his veins. He's elated, sensing a shared emotion between them, even if its full meaning remains a bit elusive. As the night wears on, they find comfort beside each other on the futon, drifting into dreams. On another evening, Yamori wanders the streets. Nazuna's absence tugging at his heart. When he finally spots her, he can't wait to show off his new toy, some slick walkie-talkies that double up as watches. Nazuna's eyes light up, imagining the fun they could have. But as Yamori delves into memory from his younger days, when he had a similar gadget, but no friend to share the chatter, the mood briefly turns somber. Nazuna can't help but laugh at the adorable dorkiness of the tale. Eager to test them out, she distances herself, and they revel in the playful distant banter. Their night of fun continues, hopping from one rooftop to another until they find themselves standing atop their school, the city lights twinkling below. Overwhelmed by strange feelings, Yamori gazes at his school, which he has stopped attending. Nazuna then bites him again. He has noticed that she speaks freely about intimate topics, but blushes at romantic ones. So, he calls her Nazuna-chan and tells her they'll be friends first. On his way back, he gets a signal on his old transmitter. His classmate Kira then appears, holding the twin device. Surprised by the morning encounter, she explains that she kept it since he left it by the mailbox. Even though she made more friends and forgot about him, missing classes made her want to reach out. Stunned to learn he did give it to her, Akira says she took it as a gift and is grateful to have had him as a friend. Astonished, Yamori realizes the misunderstanding that their estrangement caused. Akira reveals that as kids, while he was watching ants, she approached and called him a friend to his surprise. Now, he has no choice but to greet her as such, even agreeing to meet at dawn in the park. He tells Nazuna about his new friend, but she sends him to bed. After many early mornings like this, Yamori gets used to saying goodbye early, so she complains about only having a physical relationship, pretending to be a jealous girlfriend, and accusing him of seeing someone else. He avoids her gaze, confirming her suspicions, although he denies it, and leaves her alone. He then runs to meet with Kira, with whom he barely talks. They just sit in the park. She says she feels good about his company. Yamori wonders about his feelings, but then discovers that Nazuna is spying on them from a hiding place. Yamori thought the vampire was angry, and was startled when he saw her approaching, but she actually made fun of the two of them meeting up during perverted hours. Kira observed that they got along very well and assumed they might be a couple. This indeed upset Nazuna, who scolded her for thinking unnecessary romantic thoughts. To clear the misunderstanding, Nazuna simply took Yamori and approached his neck to suck it. The boy lamented because she did it in front of his friend, but with this, Kira discovered that Nazuna was a vampire using the boy as food. At the cafe, Kira questions Yamori about giving blood to Nazuna. He says he's tired of his boring life, but Kira feels the same and fulfills her duties. She asks him to go back to school and Nazuna gets upset. She questions Kira about why she didn't contact Yamori earlier if she was concerned. Nazuna leaves. Yamori pays and follows her. Yamori asks if she's angry. She denies it but ends up yelling at him for being foolish before leaving. Yamori searches for her unsuccessfully until he contacts her through the transmitter and apologizes, not knowing why. Nazuna shows up and asks him why he didn't say he wanted to go to school. Yamori replies that he couldn't tell Kira, a human, that he wanted to be a vampire. Upon noticing blood on Yamori's lip from a recent fall, Nazuna gently kisses it away, parting with a flirtatious farewell. The unexpected gesture leaves Yamori dumbfounded. After all, friends aren't supposed to kiss. Meanwhile, at school, Kira waits with growing anxiety, but Yamori never shows up. She eventually resigns herself to returning home, sinking back into her mundane routine. As night blankets the city, memories of Nazuna's kiss flood Yamori's mind, making him blush with embarrassment. Trying to push the thought aside, he evades Nazuna when he spots her. Later, while wandering, a sight of a couple deeply engrossed in a kiss makes him blush even deeper. He connects the dots, surmising that kisses signify love. With this newfound revelation, he believes he's fallen in love and might be on the verge of becoming a vampire. When he finally encounters Nazuna again, he impulsively bares his neck, urging her to drink. Nazuna, with cheeks tinted pink, chides him for his perverted demeanor. Undeterred, Yamori earnestly declares his love for her. Nazuna is skeptical, challenging him to prove it. Trembling but determined, Yamori steps closer, yearning to embrace his destiny. Succumbing to his insistence, Nazuna sinks her fangs deep into his pale neck. Once they part, To his bewilderment, he feels unchanged. Clearly, the transformation didn't take effect. He struggles to comprehend why. Nazuna, sensing his confusion, playfully teases him about the previous night's kiss. He had naively believed he was in love over such a fleeting act when, in truth, it was merely teenage hormones at play. As realization dawns, Nazuna softly caresses him, teasingly asking if he craves more kisses. Yamori, feeling vulnerable, laments how the temptress stole his first kiss, to which she confesses, with an air of nonchalance, that it was her first too. Yet, she believes such acts are merely friendly gestures. Kira couldn't sleep, so she got up at midnight and hit the streets in her school uniform. Yamori found her and was taken aback. He invited her to spend the night together. Nasuna, the vampiress, beat Yamori at video games and then turned to Kira. "If you win, I'll give you a kiss," she offered. Kira didn't hesitate to turn down the prize, but then realized she should have also offered a kiss to Yamori. He was about to deny wanting a kiss when Nasuna cut him off. Kira was a bit uneasy about Yamori's relationship with the provocative Nasuna, but the vampiress clarified that he wasn't in love with her. Then they started a schoolgirl dating game, where Yamori flat out refused to go to school, even in the virtual world. He complained about it being annoying and having to be around people. Kira couldn't believe how much he despised school. Nazuna wanted to hit the sack, and Kira learned they always slept together. The kicker? Now, they wanted all three of them to share the same bed. Kira couldn't leave either. It was raining, and school wouldn't open for hours. She couldn't stand another moment there, especially when Nazuna began to drink Yamori's blood. Yamori cried in a corner, not wanting Kira to see him like this, but Nazuna nonchalantly wiped the blood from her cheeks. "Why do you do this?" Nazuna explained that Yamori's blood was just too good. Kira was still puzzled why he allowed it, so Nazuna pushed for the truth. Summoning his courage, Yamori confessed he wanted to become a vampire, but that meant falling in love with Nazuna. The vampiress blushed deeply at this. Eventually, everyone hit the hay. Kira found solace in the fact that Yamori was happy and told him they could still be friends after his transformation. Finally, they fell asleep. Kira woke up too late for school, while Nasuna woke up when the sun was still high. Apparently, now she was the one having trouble sleeping. Kira was killing time by playing video games. Later, she checked the mailbox, but since she didn't want to do chores, she sat down to watch TV. However, the vampiress Nazuna felt like she was wasting her precious time, so she went out to find some fun in the middle of the night. Outside, she encountered a cute kitten in a park, but now its stinky smell stuck to her. Since it was still early, she went into a public bathhouse and asked the attendant to watch her phone. Inside, she complained about not being able to see herself in the mirror. When her phone sounded, she rushed out to meet up with Yamori, who could barely recognize her. Since she had just bathed, her hair was loose and she looked rather flirty. Yamori also wanted to go to a public bathhouse for the first time, and so he ended up soaking in a tub, lost in his own thoughts. The boy wandered through all the different spaces the bathhouse had to offer, while reflecting on what he was currently doing with his life. Even having fun caused some degree of stress and psychological pressure. When he left the bathhouse, Yamori looked strangely at Nasuna. While the girl tried to make fun plans, he couldn't help but think about how pretty she looked that night. He felt his heart beating faster than normal, and his body growing warmer. Nazuna realized Yamori was acting strange, so she yelled at him. Surprised, he simply asked her to suck his blood, a method he knew would help him control his emotions. Yamori thought he might be in love with her, and believed that letting her suck his blood could confirm it. When she hugged him and moved close to his neck, he felt an intense pain that made him scream. To recover, he suggested resting at a nearby inn, only to be embarrassed when he realized it was actually a love hotel. Nazuna teased him for his innocence, but then confronted him. She knew what he was thinking while she sucked his blood. Yamori confessed he was testing his feelings for her and didn't want to have immoral thoughts about her because she was his friend, even though he felt he was falling in love with her. Nazuna told him that each of his emotions flavored his blood differently, and she wanted him to experience joy, sadness, and anger so he could offer her those unique tastes. When the playful girl tries to put on adult movies, it turns out they had to pay extra for that, so they just end up watching TV for a while. After that, they watch people from a bridge. Nazuna points to someone and tells him she's already sucked their blood. Yamori gets jealous, and she can't help but tease him more. To reassure him, she says that currently he's the only one and that her past victims were one-time affairs. Just like when she took him to her apartment one night, Yamori finds it outrageous that she uses her home for dirty deeds. She gets annoyed because he's exaggerating, so she shows him how she actually uses her apartment as a sleep clinic. Nazuna dresses as a nurse and offers various services to help her clients sleep, then shows Yamori how she gives relaxing massages, completely unaware that she's striking very provocative poses, and the boy can barely contain himself. Coincidentally, a client arrives, and Nazuna asks him to attend to her because she's tired. When Yamori hesitates, the vampiress confesses that the sleep clinic is her only source of income, and she hasn't worked the entire month because she's been out playing with him. Even though she offered him half of the money she'd be paid, Yamori continued to resist helping her. That's when Nazuna used her secret feminine weapon. She flirtatiously caressed him and said that if he did it, she'd reward him with another kiss. The client he was supposed to attend to had come in a taxi with some colleagues, but got off stressed. She remembered the sleep clinic where Kazuna had previously given her a good massage and headed there again. This time, however, she was attended to by a young man who also made her wait a long time. When he returned, Yamori was wearing the uniform, but acting strange, scaring the client. While giving her the massage, he kept telling himself he was doing it for the money, not for the promised kiss. Completely lost in his thoughts, the client found him to be distracted and inefficient. When she asked his age, she was surprised he was working at such a young age. He said he was exploring what he could do with his life. Having dropped out of school, he ran away one night to learn to enjoy the nightlife. The woman was taken aback by his light and simple story. She revealed she felt the same during her adolescence. One night, while out shopping, she enjoyed the feeling of empty streets. She introduced herself as Shirakawa and wanted to know more about Yamori. He confessed that he used to be a good student but just got tired of school. Shirakawa was also tired of her job. Although it was fun, she hated having to pretend to be happy all the time. Suddenly, she remembered her miserable life and burst into tears. Then her boss called her. She had to go back to work, but Yamori felt a connection with her and wanted to help. Shirakawa saw him go crazy, blocking her way out. Then, Nazuna burst through the wall. When Yamori asked her to help prevent her from going back to work, the vampiress could only think to throw her out the window. Yamori was annoyed, while Shirakawa was sure she was about to die as she fell from the heights. Then, Yamori jumped to catch her arm, and right behind him, Nazuna caught them both. Trying to recover from her dramatic experience, Shirakawa had to answer her boss's call. Yamori told her if it was so bad as to make her cry, she should quit her job. He told her Nazuna was a vampire, and he wanted to become one too. She saw him as a naive kid who knew nothing about adult responsibilities and had abnormal goals. Yamori argued that her boss wasn't normal either, calling her to work at 2 a.m. Shirakawa found him to be a complete fool, which made her envious and led her to laugh at the absurdities she had just heard. To prove he wasn't insane, Yamori invited her to stand in the middle of the road. Shirakawa got to experience the feeling of freedom that comes from doing something forbidden, thanks to the empty streets at night. However, she couldn't just quit her job and forget her responsibilities. Yamori promised her that if he became a vampire, he would turn her into one too, so she could live a better life. Shirakawa returned to her duties, and Nazuna questioned Yamori, uncertain if he could keep his promise. After all, he would have to make Shirakawa fall in love with him. Yamori assured Nazuna that wouldn't be a problem. Another night, Nazuna welcomed him to her apartment and asked for ideas to have fun before they got bored doing the same thing. That's how they ended up visiting a nighttime pool. Nazuna showed up in an outfit that covered her body more than usual, but she still managed to make Yamori blush. She went to get a drink, and some guys started flirting with her. To make Yamori jealous, she played along until he got upset and dragged her away by the arm. Nazuna's apologies seemed insufficient to quell his anger. To cheer him up, she invited him to swim again, but this time, they flew through the air and landed in the school pool. At least now, she sincerely apologized and finally bit him, savoring the delicious taste she got that night. Yamori met with Shirakawa, who thanked him for giving her hope. Now, when her job gets too tough, she knows that one day, Yamori could turn her into a vampire and change her life. Yamori was emotionally shocked. It was the first time he had done something good for someone else. Rain snapped him out of his thoughts, and he ran for shelter. Then he noticed a blonde girl being flirted with, but she turned the guy down. She caught Yamori's eye and waved. She seemed to walk away, but suddenly appeared in front of him. They sat down to chat. As he kept staring, she called him a pervert, making him blush, but then offered to show him her breasts. Yamori said it was wrong, but had already moved closer to look. She teased him and stole his drink. Yamori chased her, asking for his drink back, but it was futile. The girl said she was bored and tired of her life. Yamori tried to cheer her up, and she hugged him to thank him. But suddenly, she revealed her sharp fangs and aimed for his neck. That's when Nazuna appeared, ripping the blonde's arm off. The blonde taunted Nazuna for breaking the rules, as she was with a human without either turning him or killing him. The two vampiresses began to fight, and another woman appeared, grabbing Yamori and kidnapping him. The boy, Yamori, ends up flying through the air with his kidnapper, who takes him to a place where there are 3 other vampire girls. They are Nico, Midori, Hatsuka, and his kidnapper, Kabura. Nico tells him that he has to choose the one he likes the most to turn him into a vampire. If he doesn't, they'll have to kill him since it's too risky for him to know their secret. But Yamori doesn't hesitate to say he prefers Nazuna. The vampire girls are stunned by his response. They all consider themselves experts in love. Midori then claims that he will fall in love with her because Nico has no experience with virgin men. Nico then starts trying to seduce him, using tactics they all know, wondering if Yamori will fall for her charms. Yamori tells Nico that she's the one who most resembles Nazuna in the way she speaks. This annoys Nico, as she doesn't like being compared to an inexperienced girl. She then tells Yamori that Nazuna's problem is she doesn't try to seduce men, but treats them poorly. That's why she hasn't been able to reproduce. The vampire girls start discussing their conquests, turning the conversation into a girl talk that makes Yamori uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Nazuna is telling Seri, the blonde vampire, how she's always been annoyed by their girl talks. Seri tells her it's dangerous to spend too much time with a human if she has no intention of seducing him. But Nazuna says she does intend to reproduce, but is too shy to admit she wants to do it with Yamori. Cutting back to Yamori, this time Midori tries her seduction techniques by sitting down to talk with him. But Yamori is not interested. He reminds her that if he doesn't want to become a vampire, they'll have to kill him. Yamori then confesses he does want to become one, so he doesn't get why they're threatening him. He wants to fall in love with Nazuna so she can turn him, and just at that moment, Nazuna arrives, too embarrassed to hear his words. The girls are surprised to find out that Nazuna is actually seducing a guy and want to know the deal they've made. Yamori says he simply offers her his blood in exchange for the chance to transform. The vampire girls don't trust Nazuna, but for now, they can't do much else. Yamori tells them not to worry because he will fall in love, even if it takes him years to achieve it. Everyone is shocked because the boy is clearly uninformed about his situation. Nico explains to Yamori that he has a maximum of 1 year to become a vampire from the moment he was first bitten. The boy can't believe it, and Nazuna apologizes for having forgotten to tell him. Nico gives him permission to leave, but Nazuna recalls that she hasn't fulfilled her promise because she was attending to a massage client. She then gives Yamori a kiss. The boy is upset that she kissed him in public, but she doesn't care and whisks him away, flying high through the night sky. Overlooking the beautiful city, Yamori confesses he is happy to have met her. Another day at the park, Yamori tells his friend Kira that he only has a year to fulfill his dream of becoming a vampire. The real issue his friend sees is that if he fails to transform, they'll have to kill him. Yamori gets scared because he hadn't considered this, but Kira tells him she'll help him fall in love, although she's not exactly sure how she'll manage to do that. Kira arrives at school and bumps into a classmate, Mahiru, who is asleep on the floor. Mahiru tells her he didn't sleep because he was out having fun with his girlfriend, who is only available at night. Kira suspects she might be a vampire but can't tell him. Mahiru asks her why Yamori hasn't been coming to school, but Kira doesn't have much to say. She recalls that when they were kids, he was the only one who approached them to watch ants crawl on the ground. Nowadays, Yamori has his own circle of friends and spends time with them. At night, Yamori runs into Seri again, the blonde girl who almost bit him. Yamori is startled and tries to escape, but she doesn't let him. They talk about Yamori's problem of needing to fall in love within less than a year. He admits that he doesn't understand feelings or what it means to be in love. Seri listens to him and ends up enchanted by his innocence. She is very excited, but manages to contain herself and eventually offers to help him as an expert in love. Yamori then goes to Nazuna's apartment to ask her out, but she rejects him and slams the door. Yamori enters and finds her playing a video game. When she ignores him, he turns off the console, angering the vampire girl immensely. But he doesn't care and insists they go on a date. Eventually, they go to the movies to watch a romantic comedy, but Nazuna gets upset because she hates the genre, so they leave the theater while Yamori checks the list that Seri had written for him. They then go to a cafe where he orders coffee and tries to make conversation. Everything feels very forced, so his friend realizes that it's all part of a plan someone else devised. She snatches the list from his hand and finds out that Seri had written it. Nazuna simply says that she's bored and leaves him alone. Yamori returns home and writhes in frustration on his bed over the failure of his first date. Nazuna gets tired of playing games at her place and looks over the list she took from Yamori. Bored in his own room, Yamori looks out the window to find Nazuna. She takes him flying through the sky again to enjoy the beautiful city lights. She then tells him they always go on dates because they do fun things together, and that's enough. One night, Yamori randomly bumps into Mahiru and they meet up in the park, recalling the good times they had in their childhood. Kira also shows up, once again unable to sleep. Kira tells Mahiru that Yamori isn't going to school because he's out every night with a girl. But Mahiru doesn't scold him, he understands. They say their goodbyes, and Yamori finds Nazuna. On the other street, Mahiru is holding hands with his girlfriend, just as Yamori and Nazuna continue on their own path, both couples living life their own way. Seri idly checks her phone, going through messages from a bunch of guys she's seducing. When she spots Yamori, she gets excited and chases after him, but is stopped with a kick from Nazuna. Seri ends up stunned on the ground and scolds Nazuna for being so rude. Then Seri slaps her, and they start to fight. Eventually they apologize, and Seri assures Nazuna she didn't mean any harm. Nazuna doesn't understand why she wants to get close to Yamori, considering it dangerous to be around a human. Seri dodges the question and leaves. Yamori follows her to ask if she has any problems she wants to talk about. She invites him to karaoke. Alone together, she tells him she has several guys interested in her, but is tired of playing games. He says that he finds it absurd for people to think love is a reason to live. This disappoints her a bit, as she finally understands why Nazuna chose him. To distract themselves, she puts on some karaoke, but he doesn't know any of the trending songs. Instead, he picks super old songs, and she scolds him for choosing boring ones. But he enjoys them. She realizes their tastes are different and lets him be. Then, a man comes banging on the door disturbingly. It's one of Seri's stalkers. Yamori gets scared, but Seri downplays it because she doesn't know what to do with so many crazy guys. So, Yamori asks what she plans to do to solve her problem, while the stalker keeps peering through the window. Seri gets annoyed and asks him to just have fun with her, like he always does with Nazuna. If the man bothers them too much, she can simply eliminate him. This scares Yamori again. After all, he is dealing with an evil vampire who doesn't care about killing humans. When the stalker finally opens the door, the girl attacks, and Yamori saves him, telling him to run. Both flee to an alley, where the stalker confronts him for being with his girl. Yamori asks if they are a couple, but the guy can't answer because he doesn't know what relationship he has with Seri. Yamori asks if he's in love and asks him to tell his story. One night, he fell on the ground and met Seri, who picked up his glasses. She was cute and playful. They sat to chat in a cafe, but he knows that Seri only felt pity for him. He confesses to Yamori that even if they are not boyfriends or anything, he is happy just to be near her. Unknowingly, he began to stalk her, sending her messages and following her everywhere. Yamori realized the guy was messed up, but when Seri appeared, he couldn't let her kill him. The blonde told the stalker that she was a vampire and was just using him, but she was no longer interested in him. She attacked, ready to kill Yamori on the way, but was stopped by Nazuna, who pinned her to the ground. Seri promised not to hurt Yamori. The stalker asked to be released because he was the only one to blame for everything. After all, it was wrong to have fallen in love with his friend. It turns out that Seri maintained a friendship with the man without intentions of turning him into a vampire. For the first time, she wants to have a friendship, but doesn't know how to act with a guy without flirting. That's why everyone falls in love with her. Nazuna releases Seri, who tells the man to go away and forget everything that happened, but she starts crying because she doesn't want to lose her only friend. He apologizes for falling in love with her and asks her to turn him into a vampire so they can be together. Yamori seems a bit jealous, but Nazuna tells him that they should go at their own pace. Then, everyone returned to karaoke to welcome the new vampire. Midori hands out flyers to people, inviting them to a maid cafe as they need more girls to serve. When she sees Nazuna on the street, she asks her for help. The vampire girl looks great in her maid outfit. Yamori will only be a customer, but after rejecting Midori, she plans to show off her flirtatious side. So Yamori goes to the entrance, where he is greeted with all the typical attention of a maid cafe. Midori makes an effort to treat him well as a customer, but when it's Nasuna's turn, she can't act friendly. Midori gets angry and offers her extra money to do better. Nazuna now feels motivated but still can't act like a real maid. Then Midori gives her a demonstration by serving one of the customers as an incredibly cute and helpful girl. Later, one of the maids brings a drink to Yamori and also gives him top-notch service. Even so, she tells him he's cute. Her name is Arisa. Yamori really enjoys her introduction. Arisa shares that since Midori started working, she has become the favorite of all the customers. She also confesses that she used to be the favorite, so she's a bit envious of her. On the other hand, since Yamori knew Midori's true personality, he still didn't like her at all. During the break, Midori saw on her phone that someone had sent provocative pictures of Arisa. Midori becomes concerned that the girl is being harassed and asks Yamori for help to catch the culprit. The boy was left alone in the break room, analyzing the pictures where the girl appears half naked. Then, Arisa walked in and caught him looking at her photos. The girl already knew that Yamori was helping to find the harasser. Then, Yamori peeked out the window from where the photos were taken and found himself on a balcony. Then the boy left so that Arisa could change her clothes. Outside, he found the door leading to the balcony, but it was padlocked. He went out to the street to see if he could access it by climbing, but it wasn't possible for a human, so he jumped up with Nazuna's help. Being on the balcony, he understood that the only way to get there was with the door key. Arisa opened the window and caught them, so Yamori blushed and apologized. Later, the boy tried to take photos from the same angle as the harasser, but they needed a model. Nazuna posed for the photos, but she looked horrible. Suddenly, Yamori remembered how each of the photos looked, and he thought he had discovered who could be the culprit. Midori came running to the break room to find out who the harasser was, but Yamori started to lose confidence, saying he was only 50% sure. When Arisa opened the door, she only found Nazuna inside. Midori and Yamori had hidden in one of the lockers. The boy explained that in all the photos, Arisa was alone, so they had to pretend that there was no one else there. Yamori tried to show the photos to Midori again, but they were too provocative, and she thought he was just a pervert. But they couldn't keep joking because they heard the window open. It turns out Arisa had set up a phone on a tripod to take the photos of herself. The three detectives caught her red-handed, and she couldn't bear the shame of being discovered. Yamori said the photos were too good to be taken sneakily, and none of them showed her underwear. Now they needed to know why she did it. It was Midori who answered. She said she was jealous because she was no longer the most popular. Arisa felt so bad that she wanted to quit, but Midori told her there was nothing wrong. It was just her own way of seeking attention. Another day, Yamori returns to visit the maid cafe and runs into Arisa, who is there as a customer in her free time. The girl says that she has improved her selfie-taking hobby and asks to take a picture together. In the end, Nazuna also continued to work occasionally at the maid cafe. Nazuna shows Yamori all the new things she bought to improve the clinic and make more money. Now the boy has to find clients. Walking through the streets, he bumps into a depressed woman. Yamori asked if they could talk for a bit, but it seemed like he was seducing her. The woman takes a puff of her cigarette and accepts the invitation. When they sit down in a cafe, the boy explains that he wasn't trying to seduce her, but was looking for a client who needed help falling asleep. The woman gets confused again, thinking he's just a pervert, but he clarifies that his boss is a girl who gives massages. The woman realizes the boy works late at night, and since that's against the law, she could report the business. Yamori gets scared, but the woman ends up making fun of him and assures him she won't say anything. She declines his offer to visit the sleep clinic, but gives him a business card, saying she works as a private detective. Yamori gets excited, thinking she solves criminal cases, but she only handles investigations of infidelity and simple things. She takes the opportunity to ask Yamori about a person she's looking for. She shows him a picture of a man known as Akuma, who turns out to be Seri's friend, who turned into a vampire. Yamori tries to deny knowing him, but the woman grips his arm threateningly. She knows he's lying but lets him go anyway. She gives him money to pay for the coffee and leaves. The detective is sure she's getting closer to the truth about the nightlife. Later on, Yamori meets up with his friends Mahiru and Kira. The three friends arrive at school to have a nighttime adventure and hop over the entrance fence one by one. Mahiru tells them he invited them because he wants to create good memories with them and takes them to explore the school's mysteries. First, they go to the bathroom to see if a ghost really appears. Since it's the girls' bathroom, Kira has to be the one to call out for the spirit. Mahiru scares her, and she ends up with a bump on her head. Then they go to the music room, and nothing strange happens there either. In the end, they take pictures all around the school, exploring its mysteries, which turn out to be just fantasies. But there's still one last thing to confirm. 10 years ago, a teacher disappeared, and rumors say he appears every night in the classrooms. Kira and Yamori don't believe the story, but when Mahiru opens the door to the classroom, they find a disturbing man. The phenomenon attacks the girl to eat her. Mahiru tries to rescue her, but Yamori is paralyzed with fear because he knows it's a vampire. Finally, he musters the courage and hits the man with a chair, freeing his friend. Yamori finds it strange that the vampire is dirty and ugly when all the vampires they know are supposed to be pretty. Then the detective woman appears with an arrogant attitude and tells the man he can suck her blood. The vampire lunges at her and sinks his fangs in, but then lets her go and writhes in pain on the floor from the bad taste. The detective had investigated him before. She knew a woman had seduced him and turned him into a vampire against his will. He hid for 10 years to avoid sucking human blood, but the kids came to the school at a time they shouldn't have, and that's why he attacked them. Coincidentally, that night was the last night he had left to live, but the detective said she would release him before he died and places a silver ring on his hand. The man began to scream in agony, but she never let go of his hand, and he vanished, turning into ashes. Yamori confronted her, asking why she had to be so cruel. Annoyed, she scolded him, calling him a naive kid who knew nothing about vampires. She then gave him her contact information in case they needed her help and left. Shaken by what had happened, Yamori returned home, realizing he truly knew nothing about vampires. While Mahiru sought out the detective for more information, Yamori lay in bed, contemplating that he only knew the good side of vampires and needed to talk to Nazuna for a more complete picture. When he met up with Nazuna, she was eager to suck his blood, but memories of the previous night made him pull away. He told her what had happened at the school. She said it was normal for the man to attack if he was starving, and Yamori asked if the same could happen to her. Annoyed, Nazuna invited him for a walk. As they strolled, she explained that vampires who go 10 years without feeding die. Yamori became afraid, knowing the detective knows how to kill a vampire. He also started fearing what Nazuna truly was. She mocked him, saying he should have been afraid all along. But now feeling better about his emotions, Yamori offered his neck to her, and she didn't hesitate to sink her fangs in. Later, Yamori accompanied Mahiru on a flower delivery. Afterward, his friend asked why he wanted to become a vampire when he could enjoy the night without transforming. Yamori began to doubt everything he'd been doing and could only return to Nazuna's apartment to ask for a hug. After that, for the first time, Nazuna explored Yamori's room completely, but found it strange not to find any adult magazines. Yamori mentioned that his mom worked late and his dad had left after their divorce. Still searching and finding nothing, Nazuna finally became serious and asked Yamori if he was having second thoughts about becoming a vampire, especially after his friend's rebuke and because he's afraid of the vampire-killing woman. Yamori realized that nightlife can be fun, but also dangerous, and he didn't want anyone to get hurt. Plus, he already has fun as a human, and Nazuna doesn't even want to turn him, so he could be fine as he is. Nazuna is disappointed but accepts it. Then she asks him why he likes the night. He says it gives him freedom. The girl says she actually likes it, because it breaks his horrible daily routine. Nazuna tells him that you can also get bored of going out to play every night. She confesses that she's been bored for many years, which is why she liked going out with him. Yamori confronts her for only showing him the good stuff, but she herself only wanted to see that. He decides to escape through the window, but the girl stops him and they both fall onto the bed, with the lights off. She leans in as if to kiss him, but just licks his neck and finally leaves. Yamori meets up with the detective and discovers that the woman knows even the most intimate and embarrassing details of his life, including his foolish dream of becoming a vampire. He asks her why she won't let him fulfill his dream. Of course, this is because vampires harm many humans. After all, he would have to attack others to feed. Although he thinks if he hasn't turned after all this time, maybe he never will, so she doesn't consider it a problem. But he has to keep in mind that if he doesn't turn, not only will the vampires kill him to protect their secret, but Nazuna will also be in danger. So she tells him he must die, unless he helps her exterminate them all. But Yamori doesn't support her, believing that vampires can also be good. The woman threatens him and calls the police. Yamori runs off to escape the patrol searching for him. He hides in a park not knowing where to go, and luckily Hatsuka arrives to help. Nazuna was in front of her console, not even pressing the buttons, until she decided to get up and go sort out her problems. On his end, Yamori was arriving at Hatsuka's apartment, where they were greeted by 3 servants overly happy to see their master. Hatsuka shooed them away to attend to her guest, and they left begrudgingly, not wanting to anger their master. Yamori sat waiting while the girl took a shower. Oddly, there was only one sofa in the entire apartment. Yamori thought the girl was very strange. Just like the other vampires, he still couldn't quite understand. Hatsuka stood in the bathroom doorway, asking him to pass a towel. That's when Yamori saw her naked body, which had no breasts and something hanging down below. It turned out Hatsuka was a man who dressed as a woman. He explained that he did it because it looked good on him and was surprised that Nazuna hadn't told him. But in reality, the vampire girl never told the boy anything. Meanwhile, Nazuna met with a group of female vampires to ask them to leave Yamori alone if he doesn't turn into a vampire. Nico got so angry that she broke a table, saying Nazuna was being too audacious. She demanded Nazuna explain why Yamori was so important to her, expecting to hear a sweet love story that would make the girl blush. On the other hand, Hatsuka was quite surprised because Yamori started having doubts about becoming a vampire. When he heard the story of the woman who killed a vampire by turning him into ashes, he told Yamori that they actually didn't know much about their own species or why some humans have good or bad blood. Then, he became curious to taste the boy's delicious blood, in exchange for having helped him before. Yamori rejected him, and Hatsuka received a message with a photo of the broken table from Nazuna's fight. He showed it to the boy, explaining that among the ambiguous rules vampires had, Nazuna was the one taking the most risks to protect him. But Hatsuka offered to take responsibility for turning him into a vampire, saying he could better understand his heart since they were both men. Yamori surprised Hatsuka by saying that at least he was cute. He understood that the gender barrier kept him from fully connecting with Nazuna. But when he asked Hatsuka how he'd make him fall in love, the guy said he'd simply brainwash him like he did his other servants. Yamori immediately rejected him for that, and said he still preferred Nazuna. He remembered how sad his friend was the night before, and decided he actually wanted to help her escape the boredom she'd been living with for many years. When he arrived at the lady's office, Nazuna had already left, and Nico said they couldn't even speak after what she'd done, let alone protect him. Worried, Yamori ran off to find her. On the way, he was found by the police but managed to escape. Nazuna was walking the streets, regretting that she'd been misleading the boy all this time, claiming to be an expert on nightlife when she really knew nothing about the night other than playing and drinking. Yamori found her at the vending machine, where they'd first met, and realized she wasn't hurt as he'd feared. In reality, Nico had forced her to confess that she was in love to embarrass her, and they made a deal that she'd have to do what was necessary to make Yamori fall for her. Only then would her friends protect them while they waited for the boy to turn. Yamori told Nazuna that his life was boring before he met her, but now he was happy and having fun. That was all he needed, so he would fall in love with her so she wouldn't be alone. The girl was moved and understood that she needed to make an effort to help the boy fall in love too. She suddenly gave him a kiss on the lips, leaving the boy surprised, and asked that they become closer. All the girls would eagerly await to see how their story would unfold.